In today's video, we're going to be building a title screen and splash screen just like that, so that you can make your game look more professional. Hi, my name is Michael. Welcome to my 2D action and adventure RPG tutorial series. Follow along and learn how to create your own ARPG in Godot 4 using GD script. All right, well, back again on a little hiatus for the last week or so. But ready to get into this. So I want to show you what I've got set up here so far. I've gone ahead and done some of the work ahead of time. So you can see I've got in my root folder, I've got a title scene folder. And in here, I've already created a scene, which I've got loaded up. Just a simple scene that I'm going to use as a backdrop for the title screen. It doesn't have to be a scene with a level like I've done. This is just something that I think is kind of easy and somewhat appropriate. But if you want to have some sort of illustration or graphic that you create or whatever it is, you can plop that in here. I've also got a scene that's a splash screen, and this is something I've made prior, and I've just brought this scene into my project, and I'll just go ahead and play this animation here. It's the Michael Games splash logo. Okay, so we've got that. You can replace this with your own and build your own, whatever you want it to be, or, you know, you don't have to. I've also got, let's go back to the file system. I've also got some sprites. Obviously in here, I've got a sprite for my Michael Games thing, and I've got a sprite for the title that we're going to plop in here, and a couple audio files that you can grab and just bring those in. Okay. And of course I didn't mention, because I've been doing this for so long, but if you need to download those assets, they'll be available, and you can look in the description below, see the link to my itch.io page where you can grab that, and there will be a zip file for this video. So go ahead and do that if you need to. Or of course, you're welcome to replace these assets with your own. And so yeah, I've gone ahead and done that work, and I've got this here, and I'm going to just go ahead. I want to run this. Let's run this scene, and we'll just look at it real quick. So we're going to take this title scene. I ran it with F6, by the way. You can see our players up here. We've got a few issues. This isn't much of a title screen right now because of some of the issues, like it displays a HUD, and you can hit pause and things like that, right? But that's what that is, and it's pretty straightforward. But we're going to go through today. We're going to turn this into a working title screen, and we're going to add that splash screen intro over it, or before it, I should say, and just introduce some, basic HUD elements or user interface elements that the user can use to start the game or load an existing save, and so on. So let's go ahead and get started. So let's go ahead and begin by setting up this title scene and kind of setting it up to be an actual, title screen that we'll use for our game. So one thing I want to do is, you can see I've already got like a tile map and these statue props, and this is kind of just here, right? Because I thought it would be a fun way to do the backdrop. And I've obviously left a space in the center where we're going to display some of our graphics, like the title and the buttons. And let's go ahead and add what we need for this. So I'm going to first start by adding a canvas layer. And anytime we want to do UI, we tend to want to use a canvas layer because it makes it independent from the rest of the scene. So here's our canvas layer, and we don't really need to do anything with it right now. Let's go ahead and underneath our canvas layer, add a control node. And this control node is going to house all of our elements. You can see the box here. So let's just set this anchor presets to full rect so that it'll fill the canvas and fill our resolution. Okay, and then we're just going to add a few things underneath here. One thing I want is a color rectangle, just to give it a backdrop color, because I don't want this scene to look quite like it is. There's other ways you could maybe do this other than a box, but that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to just set it, make it the rectangle black with roughly 50% opacity, and I'm going to make this fill the rectangle as well. Okay, so that's the effect we'll get there, is just a slightly darkened out scene. I'm going to add a sprite 2D, if I could type it. And what we need for this sprite 2D, let's open up the file system, and this title sprite that's included is what we're going to use here. And as you can see, it's 4 columns, 2 rows. So if we go to the animation settings here and set the horizontal frames to 4 and the V to 2, there we go. We've got our sprite, and I'm just going to move this into the center here. I'm just going to eyeball it. Do what feels good to me. Yeah, something like right about there, I think. Okay. And then underneath this, let's add an animation player, because I just want to animate this logo. I want to make it just kind of quick and dirty. So I'll just make a new animation, call it default, set it to autoplay. This is going to loop. And let's see here. Just select my sprite and go down to the frame and put a key on there. It's okay if we create a reset. Sounds good to me. So I'm just going to do this a few times. So there's like 8 frames of animation on here, right? Let me zoom in and 1, 2, 3, 4. And what we're going to do is, I guess we'll copy this one at the end and then come over here and paste it. Okay, so it's just a simple animation. It's just a little bit of a flash. I don't want it to repeat too frequently though, so I'm going to go ahead and increase the duration of this animation to like 5 seconds or something. And it'll just loop through, so about every 5 seconds, the logo will flash. And it seems a little quick. Let me just select those and say edit, scale selection, and I'm going to scale it. Actually, you know what? I noticed my snapping is kind of funky, and I think that's why. I'm going to change that to 0.05, and I'm just going to go in here and manually do it real quick. And one thing you'll notice about Godot 4.3 is some of the things have changed with the animation player and editing these animations. Like I can edit these and it's not interrupting, it's still playing back, which is really cool. And I also used copy and paste, which is nice. I mentioned that in a previous video, I think, but just some nice improvements to this feature. Okay, so there we go. We've got a simple animation for our sprite. And let's see. Let's go ahead and go back to our control and let's add a button. And I'm not going to do anything special with this button right now, but I'm just going to call the text in it. I'm going to have it say new game. And then let's see, let's just center this guy and drag it down a little bit. And then I'm going to resize it. I'm just going to hold Alt. I'm going to make it a little bit wider. Okay, so we've got a new game button, and I'm going to duplicate that button, and we'll change the text on this button to be continue. And like so. Okay, so when the player sees this screen, they'll be able to choose if they want to start a new game or continue an old one. And I think that should be a pretty good start for right now. Let's see, we've got our basic UI, right? I mean, if we run the project, we're going to have a small issue. We're going to have several issues. We see our player still there. We see our UI. The camera is not quite centered anymore, and that's because our player's up here in the corner and it's trying to look at him. Okay, so there's a few issues that we need to work out. I can hover the buttons, but they're not selecting, and we're going to deal with all this stuff, okay? But there we go. Player's trying to walk up there in the corner when I hit the arrow keys. That's kind of funny. A couple last things we'll do, though, before we move on is let's go ahead and go up to title scene. And actually, I got a comment about adding a script to a scene. And this is just something that I do out of habit. I've always, in my videos, I've always just come in here and just say, like, create new script. You can right-click on the scene and say, attach script, and it'll automatically name it and put it in the same folder as that. So, I mean, that's actually an easier way to do it. It's just out of habit that I don't, but let's go ahead and create that script, and it'll automatically be attached. So, you know, it saves you a little bit of time, because we're going to want a script in our title scene. And then lastly, I just want to look at a few things. When we go to our project settings, we should add this new scene as our, if we go to application run, we should add that as the main scene. So I'm going to go ahead and just browse here and find that. So let's go to root folder, title scene, select the title scene and open. So now when the game runs, it'll always run this first. And another thing I want to show is there's this boot splash option. You could replace this with an image. So this is that Godot image that shows up when your game is loading for the first time. You can also just turn this off. I think it would probably be wise to always have your own image or use the Godot one and just display that. But for a game like ours, it's loading really quickly. You can turn it off, and I'm okay with that for now. And we'll replace it with our splash introduction, that scene. So for now, I'm just going to turn that off and close it. So now if I run the game by hitting F5, you'll see we don't see the Godot logo, and then it jumps straight to this scene. Okay. So that's kind of, I mean, basically we've got now our start screen, and it kind of works. We just need to refine it and make it so that it actually brings the player into the game, right? Okay, so let's deal with the player issue. In order to fix this, now if you aren't following along with this whole tutorial series, this is, you know, episode 37 or whatever, If you're just doing your own game and you're just adding a screen to this, you may not have this problem. But for our game, we're always instantiating an instance of the player character. And we could try and code a way around to detect when not to do that. And that might be necessary for some games. But for ours, our player is simple enough. I think the best solution for us is going to be to pause the game and just simply hide the player. And so in order for this to work, we do want the player to be centered, you know, in the middle of the screen here when we do this. So let's go ahead and I'm going to add just one of our player spawn points. Let's see, player spawn. And then I can grab this and just drag it into the center here. Okay, so this will be right there. Now, if I run the game, we should see our player behind RPG now instead of up in the top left corner. And now our screen is centered kind of how I wanted it. Okay, of course, we can still walk around, and I don't want that. But in fact, I kind of liked how the screen looked when he was down just a little bit. So let me just drag him down a little bit and run that again. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I'm going to nudge him up, and I'm not even going to run it again. I'm just going to call it good like that. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We've got our player spawn so that our player spawns where we want him to, but we don't actually want to interact. In order for this all to work, we need to make sure that everything is still running. So, for example, our canvas layer, we're going to want to come in here and set the process mode to always so that our buttons still work and things like that. And then let's go into our title scene script. We're going to do quite a bit with this. I mean, it's actually kind of straightforward and basic stuff, but we are going to add several things. So I'm just going to make some space, and let's just begin with our ready function. Set that up. Okay. Now in here, what we need to do is hide the player and make it so we can't move him. Fortunately, with this game that we've been building, we've kind of already got the tools in place that we need. Well, to pause the game, I mean, we can just simply use get tree and paused, right? Set that to true. Okay, so that's going to pause the game, right? If we run it now, we shouldn't be able to move our character. Yep, arrow keys, not moving. So then the next thing that we need to do is prevent the player from moving. And what we'll do is or not from moving, but from being visible. We'll say player manager dot, because we've got our player manager dot player. That's our instance of the player, and we'll just set the visible to false. Easy as that. We're going to have to show them again once we continue and like load a level. But for now, just by doing those two things, we're not going to be able to move the player and we're not going to be able to see the player. Okay, so now it just looks like a title screen. No player in sight. Okay, so the next thing I think is let's hook up this new game button. So I want to go to my script here and let's start actually by just grabbing a reference to our buttons. So I'm just going to drag them, hold control, drop them in here into my script. So we've got button and button 2. We should probably rename these. I don't know. We'll say button new and button continue maybe. Okay. That way we kind of know what they are. And we really probably should rename them in here, but dang it. Now I got to do it. Button new, button continue. Okay, and these names are going to need to be updated. Okay, there we go. So we've got our buttons, and really to be able to do this, I mean, it's going to be fairly simple. A lot of the stuff we're going to do in this is simple. It's things that we've kind of done before, but in a different way, right? Like we've already got a system to load a level. Well, we're going to be able to utilize that here. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to let's create a method function, and we'll call it something like setup title screen. I'm breaking this out for a very specific reason, actually, and right now it might not be super obvious aside from just keeping the code cleaner. But later on, we're going to want to call this outside of the ready function. Okay. But so for right now, we'll just call this here in the ready function. We'll say setup title screen. Now, anything that we need to do when the title screen displays of the first time, we'll put within this function. And the first thing we'll start with is just button dot pressed. Let's see, not button, it's button underscore new. Yeah. Dot pressed. And then we'll connect that. We're going to need to make a new function, of course, but we'll call this function start game. Okay. Copy that guy, come down here, new function, start game. All right. And what do we need to do? Whoa, what did I type there? I hope my video doesn't get banned for that one. Okay, let's see. Pass. Okay, so what do we need to do when we start a game? We've got a level manager that we built. And we have a function already called load new level. And we just need to tell it a little bit about what we want to load. Like you can see here in the hint, we need a level path, a target transition, and a position offset. And just to remember what these are, like the level path is the path to the scene that we're going to load. And then we use the target transition and the position offset to position the character. But optionally, we don't really have to provide these. We could just use an empty string and a vector 0 for these, and it'll just start at the spawn point. And so that's what we'll do there. So what do we need to do? We need to get the level string. And I think our game is always going to load on the same level when you start a new game, right? And so I'm going to just make a constant variable, a variable that won't change, and we'll call it start level. I like to name constants in all uppercase. I think that's kind of how Godot syntax and best practices typically go. So this is just going to be the path to our level. And we can come down here and let's see, where's my levels folder? There it is. Levels. And area 1, I'm just going to pick scene 2. This is the scene with like, oops, I guess I shouldn't have put quotes because when I drug that in, it added quotes. This is the scene with my little NPCs walking around. It's a good place to start. Obviously, you would have eventually a specific level that they would start on that might have a cutscene or something like that. So you would just plop in the path to that level scene there. So then when we load the level, we will pass in that start level string. Like I said, we can come in here and instead of needing to pass in these values, we can pass an empty string for the target transition and a vector 2 0 for that offset. Okay, so let's go ahead and just test this out. I'll hit F5 to run the game and should be able to click new game. Boom. Player's invisible. Okay, let's fix that. But it worked, right? I mean, it loaded the level. What we'll do here is we're going to make another function. What we need to do is just like unhide our player, right? We could do that right here. But again, let's do one more thing and let's do this in a separate function. So let's go func, and then we'll call this exit title screen. I don't know. Okay. So anytime we exit the title screen, we're going to go to grab our player manager again, and then just set the player visible to true. And we don't need to unpause it because our level manager actually handles unpausing the game when we load a new level. So we're good there. And then we want to, I guess one thing we should do is just queue this tile screen to free. So we'll say self.queue free. Okay, yeah, that's good for now. I mean, there's going to be some other things that we're going to want to do in here. Now, when and how do we call exit title screen? And I think the best way to do this, because we're going to want some other stuff to happen in here that's going to need to happen in relation to the level loading and things like that. So in order for that to work good, we're going to actually hook in to our level manager. So if you remember, our level manager, this has been a long time since we've done this, but let me just pull this up. The level manager has some signals: level load started and level loaded. Okay, level load started is as soon as that fade to black has happened. So that's the point at which we can start doing this. So we'll just say level manager dot level load started, and we'll connect. And then we can just connect that exit title screen function right there. Okay, so once that level loader happens, then it'll call this. And that way we don't have to add like a line of code in here and start game. And same with continue. When we hook that up, we'll also use the level manager to continue our game. And so that's gonna still work with this line of code here. So I think if we got this right, it should kind of work. Let's run it. I'm gonna click new game. There we go. There's our player. One other thing we should do in here in our setup title screen is we need to grab focus of a button so that the keyboard presses will work with it. So I'm just going to go button new, or let's see, button underscore new dot grab focus like that. Okay, so then if we run it, then it should select the new game. There we go. Now I can move it with the keyboard with no issues. And let's also go ahead now that we've done that, and let's hook up the continue game button. Now the continue game is more or less the same, slightly more complicated just because there's a little bit, like a few wrinkles, I guess, that we need to consider here. So let's make a new function. We'll just call it load game. Now this is a very simple implementation because we only have one saved game in our project, and it's just designed that way. So if you had multiple save games, you'd probably need this to show a different UI, and then from there you could you could have each save game represented by a different button and so on. And in the future, I think it would be worth doing a video on that. But for now, because we only have one, let's just build the basic implementation. And this needs to call our save manager. And we've got a load game function. And it's almost that simple, actually, right? Because our save manager load game function, it'll go through and it'll do all this, and then it'll call our level manager load new level. Okay, so it kind of already does that for us. Now let's go back to the title screen. Let's just run it, and first let's make sure it works. I don't know if I've saved my game, so let's see what happens when I hit continue. Nothing? Oh. Important note, we must connect the button. So let's go button continue, dot pressed, dot connect. And this one will connect to load game. Okay, let's see what happens here. Okay, loaded in the dungeon. So that must have been the last location where I had saved my game. So that's working. That's a good sign. But we have an issue. I wanted to show you something. So let's go to project and open user data folder. So what would happen if we didn't have a save game? And I'm just going to simply rename this, change the extension. And now when I run the game, what's going to happen? We get an error because there's no save game. Because right now you can see here in the code, it's looking for a file called save.save. And if that's not there, then we're going to run into errors. And obviously we could code for and handle those errors in here. And maybe that's something we need to do in the future, but let's go to our title scene. And really what we need to do is just not allow the player to select continue. I mean, that's another thing we should do. And by doing that, we're not going to hit that error. So let's do this. Let's go back. I shouldn't have closed all those scripts. Let's go to the save manager. And in here, when we go to load game, we're just trying to get the save file right there. So let's make a new function that can grab that save file for us. And we'll call it get save file. And what this will do is it'll return a file access to that file. And what we're going to return is actually basically this piece of code right here. So I'm going to cut that and paste it there. And then here where we said file equals, we can just say get save file. Like that. And I didn't change how any of that works, right? But the advantage is see how this file access open works is if there's no file, it returns a null, if it failed for some reason. Okay, so then what we can do is we can come in here into our title scene, and let's go up to our ready function. And before we set up our title screen, I'm just gonna add an if statement here. So if save manager dot get save file equals null, that means we don't have a save game. So then what we'll do is we'll go button continue dot disabled equals true. I don't think we need to do both of these, but I'm going to just be double sure. We're going to disable it, and then we're also going to hide it. So we'll just set the visible to false. Okay. Now when we run the project, because right now we don't have a save game, right? I removed that. There's no continue button. Okay. And then if we go back to our user folder and restore this file, SAV. Yeah, I want to change it. Now when we run it, There we go. We've got our continue button back. Okay. So pretty straightforward stuff. Okay, so let's see a couple of the things I want to do here while we're working on these buttons. I want to come in here. I'd like it to have a little sound when they, move or select a different option, and as well as when they press the button on one. So let's go in here somewhere. It doesn't really matter where. I'm going to add an audio stream player. Okay, and then set the max polyphony just up a little bit. I think the master bus is fine because it's always going to play from this screen. Save that. Now let's go to our script and let's bring in our audio stream player. Then let's come in here and let's add some export variables. We're going to handle not only buttons, but we'll add some music. So I'm just going to add an audio stream for a music file as well. Okay, so we're going to have an export variable for audio stream that we'll call music. And then let's just copy this and paste it twice. We'll call this one button focus audio. And then we'll call this one button select audio. Let's call it button pressed audio. Like that. And we save it. And then when we come to our title scene here, we've got these different options here. And we'll just go to our file system. And let's see. Title scene, audio folder. Okay, so we've got, this waves file that's in that zip folder is what we'll use for the music. Menu focus for the button focus audio. Menu select, button press audio. Okay, there we go. We've got some sound effects. That way you can reassign them if you need to. And then let's go down to our setup title screen. Okay, and in here, we can just connect. Actually, first let's do this. We need to actually create a way to be able to play the audio. So let's do that first. So let's just say play audio. And we're going to pass in an audio stream. And then we'll grab our audio stream player in this function and we'll set whatever we pass in to be the stream. And then we just simply play that. Okay. So we've got a little function here. Then when we go back up to our setup title screen, we're going to do this. We're going to go for our button new dot focus entered. Focus entered dot connect. And in here, we're going to connect to the play audio method. And we've done this in the past, but we need to pass something in. And with signals, we do that through binding. So we'll say dot bind. And then in here, we can put the parameters that we need to pass. So we'll pass in the button focus audio like that. Just copy and paste that for our continue button. You could write like some sort of a loop that finds all the buttons and just does this to each button. Since we've only got two, I'm going to do it that way. But if you had more than two, you definitely want to use some sort of script maybe, or build it into a button scene that you've edited, or your own custom code. All right, and then in order to play the pressed sound effect, we're going to come down here to our start and load game methods, because we're already calling those on the pressed signal for our buttons. And we're just going to call our play audio and pass in the pressed audio. Okay, so we'll just put that on the first line of each of these functions. And let's go ahead and run that. Okay, we've got a little click and a sound effect. Last but not least, we can come to, let's see, our setup title screen, and we can play that music that we've got with our audio manager. So we've got that global audio manager that has a play music function, and we just need to pass in an audio stream. And let's run that one more time. There we go. We've got our music, and it transitions to the other one. Okay, so easy peasy. Okay, one issue we need to deal with, we need to remove this HUD, and we need to prevent being able to hit the pause menu. So let's handle those two issues right now real quick. Okay, and we can do this here in the ready function. We'll go up to the ready function, and let's see, we're pausing the game, making the player invisible. Let's take our player HUD, which is a global scene that shows our HUD, and we'll just set it visible equals false. And then we'll also go to our pause menu, And by default, the pause menu has a process modes that's set to like always. So we'll just set the process mode to disabled here. And then what we need to do, obviously, is change these once we've finished loading a level. So we can do that down here. Let's see, on our exit title screen. I'm just going to go ahead and paste these two lines and change this to true. And this should be process mode. Let's see, always, like that. Let's run one more time. Oh no, I accidentally hit a key while I was doing that. Okay, let's run that again. Okay, now when I hit escape, I'm not seeing the pause menu come up, and you can see the hearts are gone from my HUD. Once we load the game though, all that works. Okay, coming quite along. Okay, so now I want to add my splash screen thing, and because I've already got a splash screen all set up, this is kind of easy for me. Let me just open up my splash scene and show you what's going on. So this has an animation in it. Let's see if I select my animation player. The default animation here that's auto plays on start, and it just plays my animation and then it fades out. Okay, I've also gone ahead and I just have a built-in script in this splash screen that just connects to the animation finished signal and will emit that as a signal called finished when it's done. So this is a pretty straightforward scene, and you could build one like this, or alternatively in your title scene, you could just set up the splash screen as part of this and it could just be on top of your UI, okay? So what I'm going to do though is I'm going to come here and I'm going to grab my splash screen. I'm going to just drop it as a child of the canvas layer, and which that actually is going to work quite well, but you'll notice that the game's music is playing already when I begin and all the things are set up. That might be okay for you. I don't want that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here to my title screen, and instead of calling setup title screen right here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get my splash screen, and I'm not even going to store this as a variable. I'm just going to get the finished signal, and I'm going to connect. Oops. And then I'll just put this setup title screen in there. So now when I run it, splash screen plays. There we go. As soon as it fades out, it begins and it sets up everything. Okay. Well, there we have it. That's everything we need to do to create that. Thanks everybody for watching. Go ahead and give this video a like if you enjoyed the content, if you find it helpful, and leave some comments below. Let me know what it is you're looking forward to learning next. If you want to see what I am working on next, and as my next videos come out, please subscribe. And we're going to be working on building out some more features for our player, some new abilities, and I mean, our player doesn't even die yet in this game. I don't know why we haven't done that yet, other than there's more interesting things, I suppose. So stay tuned, that's coming up soon. And in addition to that, I'll be putting out other content, other types of videos in the future. So subscribe if you want to see those. That's all I've got for today. So thanks for watching, and as always, we'll see you next time.